Marcus Thompson pulled his worn-out janitor cart through the quiet halls of the Sterling Art Gallery in downtown Chicago. The squeaky wheels echoed against the marble floors as he moved past million-dollar paintings hanging on pristine white walls. It was 11 p.m., and like every night for the past 7 years, he was here to clean while the city slept. At 52 years old, Marcus had the kind of weathered face that told stories without speaking. His dark skin was marked with laugh lines around his eyes, though he didn't laugh as much these days. His uniform, while clean and pressed, had seen better days, just like the shoes he'd been meaning to replace for months. The night shift was lonely, but Marcus preferred it this way. During the day, the gallery buzzed with wealthy art collectors, famous artists, and critics who looked right through him as if he were invisible. At night, it was just him, his cleaning supplies, and most importantly, his secret. In the small maintenance room where he took his breaks, Marcus had created a tiny art studio. It wasn't much, just a rickety folding table pushed against the wall, but it was his sanctuary. Here, during his lunch breaks, and whenever he finished his cleaning rounds early, Marcus would create art. He couldn't afford fancy canvas or expensive paints like the artists whose works he cleaned around. Instead, he collected cardboard boxes from the gallery's dumpster, flattened them carefully, and used them as his canvas. His paints were a mix of whatever he could afford from the dollar store, combined with leftover house paint from building maintenance jobs. Tonight, as he finished mopping the main gallery floor, Marcus checked his watch. It was midnight, break time. He hurried to his maintenance room, heart beating faster with excitement. For the past month, he had been working on a special piece, one that brought back memories of his childhood in Georgia. The cardboard canvas leaned against the wall, covered with an old sheet he brought from home. Marcus removed the sheet carefully, revealing his work in progress. The painting showed his grandmother's small wooden house, surrounded by blooming magnolia trees. In the foreground, a Sunday gathering was taking place, people in their best clothes sharing food and laughter under the warm southern sun. As he picked up his brush, Marcus remembered those Sundays. His grandmother, though poor, would cook enough food to feed the whole neighborhood. People would bring chairs and tables, setting them up in the yard. Children would play while adults shared stories. Those were the days before she passed away, before the family scattered across the country looking for better opportunities. Marcus mixed colors on a plastic plate he used as a palette. He didn't know the proper techniques that real artists used. He'd never been to art school or taken a single class. Everything he knew came from watching YouTube videos on his old phone and studying the paintings he cleaned around each night. His hands moved with surprising grace for someone who spent their days handling mops and brooms. Each brush stroke was careful, deliberate. He added touches of golden yellow to capture the sunlight filtering through the magnolia branches. The faces of the people in his painting weren't perfect, but they carried emotion that came from memory and heart rather than technique. Time always passed too quickly in his maintenance room studio. Before he knew it, his break was over. Marcus sighed, carefully covering his painting again. He had to get back to work. There were still 3 floors to clean before his shift ended at 6 a.m. As he pushed his cart toward the elevator, Marcus thought about his mother's words from their weekly phone call last Sunday. "Son," she'd said, "you got to show your art to someone someday. You can't keep hiding your light in that maintenance room forever." But Marcus wasn't ready. He'd seen how the gallery staff treated amateur artists who tried to show their work. The sneers, the dismissive laughs, the cruel comments they thought nobody could hear. He'd seen enough to know that a janitor with no education, painting on cardboard, would never be taken seriously in this world of fine art and wealthy collectors. Still, as he rode the elevator to the next floor, Marcus couldn't help but dream. Maybe someday, someone would see his work and understand what he was trying to say. Maybe someday, his paintings would hang on these walls instead of just being hidden away in a maintenance room. For now, though, he had floors to mop and trash cans to empty. The dreams would have to wait until his next break, when he could return to his cardboard canvas and the memories of Georgia Sundays. Days turned into weeks as Marcus continued his routine at the Sterling Art Gallery. Each night brought the same tasks: mopping floors, dusting frames, and emptying trash bins. But his mind was always on the growing collection of artwork hidden in his small maintenance room. One particular Wednesday night, Marcus arrived at work to find the gallery unusually busy. A new exhibition was being installed, and the staff was working late. He kept his head down, pushing his cart past workers hanging expensive paintings and adjusting bright spotlights. In his maintenance room, Marcus had something special waiting. Over the weekend, he had finished his largest piece yet, a massive cardboard canvas made from 4 boxes carefully taped together. On it, he had painted a scene from the local jazz club where his father used to play saxophone. The painting captured the smoky atmosphere, the gleaming instruments, and the joy on people's faces as they lost themselves in the music. While mixing some paint for touch-ups, Marcus heard voices approaching his room. Before he could cover his work, the door opened. 2 young gallery assistants, Kate and Jeffrey, stood in the doorway, looking for extra storage space for some shipping crates. Their eyes went wide when they saw Marcus's paintings leaning against the walls. Kate's perfectly painted lips curled into a smirk. "Oh my God, Jeffrey, look. Our janitor thinks he's an artist." Jeffrey stepped closer to examine the jazz club painting. "Is that cardboard? And is that house paint? This is hilarious." He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures. Marcus stood frozen, his hands trembling slightly as he held his dollar store paintbrush. He wanted to speak up, to defend his work, but years of staying invisible had made his voice weak. "Wait until Amanda sees this," Kate laughed, referring to the gallery's assistant curator. "She's always talking about outsider art. Well, it doesn't get more outside than this." They left, their laughter echoing down the hallway, but not before Jeffrey called back, "Keep your day job, or well, night job, I guess." That night, Marcus couldn't paint. He sat in his chair, staring at his jazz club piece, seeing it through their eyes. The cardboard was warped in one corner. The perspectives weren't quite right. The faces weren't as detailed as those in the gallery's paintings. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was fooling himself. But as he started his cleaning rounds, something strange happened. Each time he passed a famous painting, he stopped to really look at it. There was a Basquiat that people raved about, painted on a door rather than canvas. There was a folk art piece that broke every rule of traditional painting but sold for millions. There were abstract works that looked nothing like reality. By the time his shift ended, Marcus had made a decision. He wouldn't destroy his paintings as he first planned. Instead, he went home and did something he'd never done before. He created a social media account to share his art. Using his old phone, he carefully photographed each of his pieces. His hands shook as he posted the first image, the Sunday gathering at his grandmother's house. In the description, he wrote simply, "Memories on cardboard. Paint on dreams." For the next few days, Marcus barely slept. During his shifts, he could hear Kate and Jeffrey whispering and laughing whenever he passed. But at home, he kept posting his art. 5 followers became 10, 10 became 50. People he didn't know began leaving comments. The emotion in these pieces is incredible. Love how you use everyday materials. There's something so honest about these paintings. A week after the incident in the maintenance room, Marcus arrived at work to find an elderly woman waiting by his cart. Her gray hair was styled elegantly, and her clothes spoke of money, but her eyes were kind. "Mr. Thompson," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah Chen. I'm an independent curator, and I saw your work online. I believe you have something special, something real. Would you be willing to show me your paintings?" Marcus looked at her, then down at his janitor's uniform, then back at her face. There was no mockery in her expression, no hint of a joke. Slowly, he reached for his maintenance room key. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment when everything would change. As he led Sarah to his hidden studio, he could almost hear his mother's voice. "You can't keep hiding your light forever." Word spread quickly through the Sterling Art Gallery about Sarah Chen's interest in the janitor's artwork. The news created a strange tension in the building's elegant halls. During the day shifts, when Marcus came in to clean the bathrooms, you could feel the weight of curious stares and hear the whispers that followed him. Kate and Jeffrey had made sure everyone knew about the maintenance room artist. Their initial mockery had evolved into something more pointed when they learned about Sarah Chen's visit. During a busy afternoon, they cornered Marcus as he was restocking paper towels. "So, our janitor is going to be the next big thing in art." Kate's voice dripped with sarcasm. Sarah Chen must be getting desperate for her next discovery. Jeffrey leaned against the bathroom door. "Maybe we should all quit our jobs and start painting on trash. Apparently, that's what passes for art these days." Marcus kept his head down and continued his work, his calloused hands steady despite their taunts. 7 years of invisibility had taught him how to wear silence like armor. Amanda, the assistant curator, stopped by later that day. She stood in the maintenance room doorway, examining Marcus's paintings with a critical eye while he mopped nearby. Her expensive silk blouse and pearls seemed out of place in the small, cluttered space. "I understand what Sarah sees in these," she said, not directly addressing Marcus. "They're primitive, raw, the kind of thing collectors eat up when they want to feel like they're supporting the common man." She turned to leave, adding over her shoulder, "But let's be realistic about where this belongs." The following week, during a small gallery event, Marcus overheard a conversation between two art critics who'd learned about his work. They stood near his cleaning cart, acting as if he couldn't hear them. "It's a charming story," one said, swirling his wine glass. "The janitor turned artist, very Cinderella, but without proper training, without understanding the fundamentals of composition and color theory." "Exactly," the other replied. "You can't just pick up a brush and call yourself an artist. There's a reason we have art schools, why people spend years studying technique." That night, after everyone had left, Marcus stood alone in the gallery's main hall. The spotlights illuminated million-dollar paintings, their frames gleaming. He looked at his reflection in the polished floor, a man in a worn uniform, his work boots scuffed from years of labor. But then he thought about Sarah Chen's words during their meeting. She had looked at his jazz club painting for a long time before speaking. "You know what I see here, Mr. Thompson? I see music. Not just people playing instruments, but actual music. I can hear it coming off the cardboard. That's something they can't teach in any art school." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his art account. The followers had grown to over 1,000 now. People from around the world were commenting on his pieces. "Your paintings make me feel things I can't explain. Please don't let anyone change your style. This is what real art looks like, straight from the soul." A notification popped up. Sarah had sent him a message. "Meeting arranged with Riverside Gallery for next week. They want to see your complete collection. This is just the beginning." As Marcus pushed his cleaning cart through the quiet gallery, he thought about all the voices, the mockery, the dismissal, the criticism. But for the first time, they didn't seem to matter as much. He thought about his grandmother's house, his father's jazz club, all the memories he captured on salvaged cardboard. Later that night, in his maintenance room studio, Marcus started a new painting. This time, he painted the gallery itself, but not the pristine public space everyone saw. He painted the night version he knew, the empty halls, the silent paintings, the solitary figure pushing a cleaning cart past priceless art. But in his version, the janitor's shadow on the wall was shaped like an artist at an easel. When he finished, he stepped back and smiled. Let them laugh. Let them whisper. His art didn't come from schools or theories. It came from life, from years of watching, listening, and feeling while everyone thought he was just cleaning floors. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth more than all their training combined. He covered the painting carefully and checked his watch. There were still floors to mop and trash cans to empty. That art world's judgment would have to wait. For now, he had work to do, both with his mop and with his brush. The meeting at Riverside Gallery changed everything. Sarah Chen had arranged for Marcus to bring 5 of his best pieces, including the jazz club painting and the view of his grandmother's Sunday gathering. He'd taken a rare day off from work, carefully wrapping his cardboard artworks in old blankets and loading them into Sarah's car. The gallery owner, Michael Reeves, was nothing like Marcus had imagined. Instead of the stern art world elite he'd expected, Michael was a burly man with tattoos and a warm smile. He'd grown up in Brooklyn, he explained, watching street artists transform walls into masterpieces. "This is something special," Michael said, standing before Marcus's jazz club piece. "The way you've captured the energy, the movement, it's alive." He walked closer, examining the texture of the house paint on cardboard. "And your use of materials, it's not a limitation, it's part of the story." Sarah stood quietly in the corner, watching as Michael studied each piece. Her faith in Marcus's talent was being validated with every approving nod from the gallery owner. "Tell me about this one," Michael said, pointing to the painting of the gallery at night. Marcus cleared his throat, still unused to discussing his work. "That's where I work, the Sterling Gallery. But it's different at night. Everything is more honest, I guess. No pretense. Just the art and the silence." Michael's eyes lit up. "That's exactly what I see in it. The loneliness, but also the piece. He turned to Sarah. We need to show these. Not just one or two pieces, I want a full exhibition. The words hit Marcus like a physical force, an exhibition. His paintings hanging on real gallery walls, not hidden in a maintenance room, but displayed proudly for everyone to see. But reality crashed in quickly. I can't afford to create enough pieces for a full show, Marcus admitted. The materials, the time. Michael waved his hand dismissively. We'll handle everything. Materials, promotion, the whole thing. Sarah told me you're still working as a janitor. When Marcus nodded, Michael continued. Keep your job for now if you want to, but I'm giving you an advance. I want you to have time to create. On the drive back to the Sterling Gallery, where Marcus still had an evening shift to work, Sarah had explained what this meant. They're going to promote you as a major emerging artist, Marcus. The story alone will draw people in, but it's your talent that will keep them talking. That night, as Marcus cleaned the Sterling Gallery's floors, everything looked different. The same halls he'd mopped for 7 years seemed to shine with new possibility. Even Kate and Jeffrey's snide remarks when they worked late barely registered. In his maintenance room, Marcus found a note had been slipped under the door. It was from Amanda, the assistant curator who had dismissed his work just weeks ago. Mr. Thompson, I heard about the Riverside Gallery show. Perhaps I was hasty in my judgment. Would you consider displaying one piece in our contemporary wing? Amanda. Marcus placed the note in his pocket without responding. He looked at his current work in progress, a large piece showing a child watching his father play saxophone, the audience just shadowy figures in the background. The cardboard was warped slightly at the edges, and the house paint had dried with a rough texture that no professional artist would accept. But now he understood. These weren't flaws. They were part of his story, as essential as the memories he painted. His phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Michael wants to open the show in 2 months. He says to paint whatever moves you. No restrictions. Marcus picked up his brush, dipped it in paint, and began adding details to the saxophone player's hands. Outside his maintenance room, the art world was about to discover him. Critics would analyze his technique, collectors would debate his value, and galleries would compete for his work. But here, in this small room with its flickering fluorescent light and smell of cleaning supplies, none of that mattered. He was still just Marcus Thompson, telling his stories on cardboard, one brush stroke at a time. He worked through his break that night, adding touches of gold to the saxophone, making it gleam like his father's old instrument. Tomorrow would bring meetings and decisions and changes. But for now, it was just him, his memories, and the quiet knowledge that sometimes the most unexpected dreams come true in the most unexpected places. The opening night at Riverside Gallery arrived faster than Marcus could have imagined. Over 2 months, he had created 15 new pieces, each one painted in his maintenance room after his cleaning shifts. Michael had offered him a proper studio, but Marcus refused. The small room had become sacred to him, a space where magic happened between mop buckets and cleaning supplies. The gallery was transformed for the exhibition. His paintings, now professionally framed but still on their original cardboard canvases, hung against pristine white walls. Spotlights highlighted each piece, making the house paint shimmer in ways Marcus had never seen before. Are you ready? Sarah asked, straightening his tie. Marcus had bought his first suit for the occasion, nothing fancy, but a far cry from his janitor's uniform. His mother sat nearby in a wheelchair, beaming with pride. She'd insisted on flying in from Georgia, despite her health issues. Look at my baby, she kept saying to anyone who would listen. I told him all those years ago, don't hide your light. The doors opened at 7 p.m. sharp. Art collectors, critics, and curious visitors began flowing in. Marcus noticed some familiar faces from Sterling Gallery, including Amanda, who was scrutinizing each piece with intense concentration. Kate and Jeffrey stood near the entrance, their usual smirks replaced by uncertain expressions. Michael had priced the paintings modestly by gallery standards, ranging from $5,000 to $25,000. We'll let the market decide your true value, he had explained to Marcus. Better to sell out your first show than have pieces sitting unsold. The first sale happened 20 minutes after opening. A wealthy collector from New York bought Father's Jazz, the piece showing the child watching his father play saxophone. $15,000, Michael whispered to Marcus. She didn't even try to negotiate. By the hour mark, small red dots began appearing next to the paintings, indicating sales. Marcus watched in amazement as his memories, painted on discarded cardboard, became valuable art pieces. The Sunday gathering at his grandmother's house sold for $18,000. The night view of Sterling Gallery went for $22,000. But the most surprising moment came when Amanda approached Marcus directly. "That piece," she said, pointing to a painting of children playing double dutch on a hot summer day, "I'd like to acquire it for Sterling's permanent collection." Marcus felt his throat tighten. The same gallery where he'd mopped floors for 7 years now wanted to display his work. "How times change," he managed to say. "I was wrong about you," Amanda admitted. "Sometimes we get so caught up in technique and training that we forget what art is really about, moving people's hearts." By the end of the night, 13 of the 15 pieces had sold. Marcus sat in a quiet corner, watching as the last visitors trickled out. His mother had fallen asleep in her wheelchair, a content smile on her face. Sarah approached with a glass of champagne. "Over $200,000 in sales, Marcus. After the gallery's commission, you're looking at more money than you'd make in 5 years of janitorial work." Marcus took the glass but didn't drink. He was thinking about his maintenance room at Sterling, about the quiet nights spent creating these pieces while the world slept. "Will it always be like this?" he asked. Sarah sat beside him. "No," she said honestly. "The art world is fickle. Some will love you, others will dismiss you. Prices will go up and down. But none of that matters if you stay true to why you started painting in the first place." As they began taking down the sold paintings for shipping, Marcus noticed something interesting. Each buyer had left their contact information, but many had also left notes. "Your work reminded me of my own grandmother's kitchen. I could hear the jazz music in that painting. Thank you for showing us beauty in ordinary moments." Marcus carefully folded each note and put them in his pocket. Tomorrow, he would return to Sterling Gallery for his usual night shift. The maintenance room waited for him, along with new pieces of cardboard and his collection of house paint. But something had changed. His art, born in that humble room between cleaning rounds, had found its way into homes and galleries across the country. His stories, painted on discarded materials, had touched people's hearts. As he helped wheel his mother out to the waiting taxi, she squeezed his hand. "You didn't just make art," she said softly. "You made people remember their own stories." Marcus smiled. That was worth more than all the sales combined. 3 months after his first exhibition, Marcus's life transformed in ways he never imagined. Major art magazines featured his story, from janitor to art sensation. His Instagram following grew to over 100,000 people. Galleries across the country began calling Sarah, wanting to show his work. But Marcus still kept his job at Sterling Gallery, though now he only worked 3 nights a week. "The maintenance room is my real studio," he told Sarah when she suggested he quit. "That's where the magic happens." One Tuesday evening, as he was mixing paints in his maintenance room, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. It was James Chen, one of the most influential collectors in the modern art world. The man's presence seemed out of place among the mops and cleaning supplies. "I've been watching your journey," James said, examining Marcus's current work in progress. A large piece showing children playing in fire hydrant spray on a hot city day. "Your prices have tripled since your first show." Marcus wiped his hands on his janitor's uniform. "I try not to think about the money," he replied honestly. "I just paint what I remember, what I feel." James nodded approvingly. "That's exactly why I'm here. I'm curating a special exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art. Theme: American Life Through Unseen Eyes. I want your work to be the centerpiece." The mop bucket beside Marcus suddenly seemed very far away. The Museum of Modern Art. It was every artist's dream. Yet here he stood in his janitor's uniform, paint-stained cardboard propped against the wall, being offered something that most trained artists would kill for. News of the upcoming Noame exhibition spread quickly through the art world. The same critics who had dismissed Marcus's work now wrote lengthy articles analyzing his unique perspective and raw authenticity. Art students began experimenting with cardboard and house paint, trying to capture his style. Kate and Jeffrey, who still worked at Sterling Gallery, completely changed their attitude. "We always knew you had something special," Kate said one day, as if she'd never mocked his work. Marcus just smiled and continued mopping the floor. His newest pieces started selling for unimaginable prices. A bidding war broke out over his painting of the Sterling Gallery at night, eventually selling for $180,000. Collectors who had ignored his first show now desperately tried to acquire his work. But success brought new challenges. Some critics accused him of selling out when he finally agreed to use professional canvas for a commissioned piece. Others debated whether his work would lose its authenticity now that he could afford better materials. During this whirlwind, Marcus received a letter from a young janitor in Detroit who had started painting during his night shifts. "You showed me it's possible," the letter read. "Now I don't feel ashamed of creating art in my maintenance closet." That letter meant more to Marcus than any gallery sale. He began setting aside time to mentor other self-taught artists, particularly those working service jobs. He turned his maintenance room into an informal classroom on weekends, teaching others how to see beauty in ordinary moments. Sarah watched all this with pride. "You haven't changed," she told him one evening as he prepared for his night shift. "That's your real masterpiece." Marcus looked at his cleaning cart, then at the cardboard canvas propped against the wall. On it, he was painting his latest piece, a scene showing his first exhibition, but from an unusual angle. It showed the cleaning staff admiring the artwork after hours, their mops and buckets beside them, their faces filled with hope. "Art isn't about where you come from," he said, adjusting his uniform. "It's about what you see along the way." The maintenance room light flickered overhead, just as it had on all those nights when he was painting in secret. But now, instead of hiding his work, he left the door open. Let people see that great art could come from humble places. Let them understand that sometimes the most beautiful stories are told by those who clean up after everyone else goes home. His phone buzzed with another gallery offer, but Marcus ignored it for now. He had floors to mop and trash to collect. And somewhere between those mundane tasks, he knew another painting would begin to take shape. Born from the perfect combination of memory, cardboard, and house paint. The Sotheby's auction house in New York was packed with collectors, dealers, and art world elite. Marcus sat in the back row, still feeling out of place despite his new tailored suit. His mother sat beside him, holding his hand tightly as they waited for Lot 47, his painting Grandmother's Sunday. The piece had become his most talked about work, painted on 4 cardboard boxes carefully joined together. It showed his grandmother's house during those memorable Sunday gatherings, but with a twist. The scene was painted from inside looking out, through a window streaked with rain. The effect made the joyful gathering outside seem like a precious memory fading with time. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced. Thompson's Grandmother's Sunday, opening bid at $1 million. Marcus felt his mother's hand tighten around his. $1 million. More money than his grandmother had seen in her entire life. The bidding started immediately, hands raising across the room. 1.5 million. 2 million. 2.5. Sarah Chen sat a few rows ahead, watching the numbers climb. She'd helped arrange this auction, knowing it would cement Marcus's place in art history, but even she seemed surprised by the intensity of the bidding. 3 million, called out a voice Marcus recognized. It was James Chen from MoMA, his face determined. The room grew quiet as another hand raised. 3.2 million, said a woman in the front row, Maria Castellanos, the famous collector known for her eye for emerging artists. James Chen shook his head slightly. He wouldn't go higher. 3.2 million going once. Twice. The auctioneer paused, scanning the room. Sold to Ms. Castellanos for $3.2 million. The room erupted in applause. Marcus sat stunned, remembering how he painted that piece during his night shifts, mixing house paint with cheap acrylics, working by fluorescent light while the world slept. His mother was crying softly beside him. After the auction, Maria approached them. "Mr. Thompson," she said warmly, "this painting belongs in my museum in Spain, but I have a condition. I want you to come speak to art students there. Show them that great art can come from anywhere." That evening, Marcus returned to Sterling Gallery for his weekly maintenance shift. He kept this one shift, despite his success, despite the millions in his bank account. The familiar weight of the mop in his hands helped keep him grounded. As he cleaned, he overheard 2 young janitors talking in Spanish, not realizing he understood. "That's him, the millionaire janitor artist," one whispered. "Why does he still clean?" asked the other. "They say he comes to paint in the maintenance room. But he's rich now. he could have a real studio. Marcus smiled to himself, pushing his cart past them. If only they understood. This was a real studio. These halls, these floors he'd mopped for years, had given him something priceless, the time and space to find his voice as an artist. Later, in his maintenance room, Marcus stared at his newest work in progress. It showed the auction room, but from an unusual perspective. From behind the auctioneer's podium, looking out at a sea of raised hands. In the back, barely visible, was a figure in a janitor's uniform, mop in hand, watching dreams come true. His phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. The art world is going crazy. Everyone wants to know what you'll paint next. Marcus looked around his small room, at the cleaning supplies, the cardboard pieces waiting to become canvases, the bottles of house paint mixed with professional acrylics. Success hadn't changed his materials or his methods. He still painted what he knew, what he felt, what he remembered. He picked up his brush and began adding details to the auction scene. Outside, the art world buzzed with million-dollar sales and critical acclaim. But in here, in this quiet room that smelled of floor cleaner and paint, Marcus Thompson was still just telling stories, one cardboard canvas at a time. Some dreams, he had learned, come true not despite humble beginnings, but because of them. 1 year after the record-breaking Sotheby's auction, Marcus Thompson stood in a renovated warehouse in South Chicago. The space, once abandoned, now housed the Thompson Art Foundation, his way of giving back to the community that shaped him. The foundation's mission was simple but powerful, to support working-class artists, especially those in service jobs. The warehouse had been converted into free studio spaces, each one equipped with both traditional and unconventional art supplies. There was even a special section filled with carefully flattened cardboard canvases. "Welcome to your new studio," Marcus said to Maria, a cleaning lady from a local hospital who painted beautiful portraits during her breaks. Like him, she had been creating art in maintenance closets and break rooms, hiding her talent from the world. The foundation provided more than just space. Marcus had set up a mentorship program, connecting established artists with emerging talents who couldn't afford formal training. Every Sunday, reminiscent of his grandmother's gatherings, the warehouse hosted community art shows where anyone could display their work. Still maintaining his one shift at Sterling Gallery, Marcus had turned his original maintenance room into a small museum. His old mop bucket stood in one corner, while photos of his early works hung on the walls. A sign outside read, "Where dreams begin. Keep your mop close and your brushes closer." On this particular morning, Marcus was meeting with a group of high school students. They sat on folding chairs in the warehouse as he showed them his first cardboard paintings. "You see this?" he said, holding up a worn piece of cardboard. "This isn't trash. This is possibility. Art isn't about expensive materials or fancy degrees. It's about what you see in your heart and how badly you want to share it." The students leaned forward, entranced by his story. One boy raised his hand. "My dad's a truck driver," he said quietly. "He draws amazing things in his logbook during breaks, but he's embarrassed to show anyone." Marcus smiled. "Bring him here. Show him he's not alone." Later that day, Sarah Chen visited the foundation. She walked through the spaces, watching people paint, draw, and create. Some wore janitor uniforms, others restaurant aprons or construction boots. All of them had stories to tell. "You've created something extraordinary here," she said to Marcus. "This is bigger than just art." Marcus nodded, watching a building maintenance worker teach a hotel maid how to mix house paint for better texture. "Success is meaningless if we don't lift others up," he replied. The foundation had already helped launch several careers. 3 of its members had gallery shows scheduled for the coming year. Others had sold pieces to collectors who were intrigued by their unique perspectives and unconventional techniques. But Marcus's proudest moment came when he received a letter from a museum curator in Detroit. They wanted to host an exhibition called Hidden Artists, featuring work created by service workers in break rooms, maintenance closets, and back offices across America. "Your story showed us what we've been missing," the letter read. "There's a whole world of art happening while the rest of us sleep." That evening, as Marcus prepared for his weekly cleaning shift at Sterling, he thought about his journey. His paintings now hung in museums around the world, but his most valuable possession was still his maintenance room key. He pushed his cleaning cart through the gallery's quiet halls, passing a spot where his own work now hung alongside the masters. The nameplate read, Marcus Thompson, Night Shift Dreams, Mixed Media on Cardboard. In his maintenance room studio, Marcus sat down to paint. His new piece showed the warehouse full of working artists, the truck driver with his logbook, the maid with her paintings, the janitor with his sculptures. But in the background, visible through a window, was his grandmother's house, where he first learned that sharing your gifts could feed more than just the body. His phone buzzed with messages about upcoming exhibitions and million-dollar offers, but Marcus set it aside. He had more important work to do, both with his mop and with his brush. Tomorrow, another group of hidden artists would come to the foundation, carrying dreams in their work bags alongside their uniforms. And he would be there to tell them what his grandmother once told him: don't hide your light. The world needs your stories, exactly as you tell them.